In 2026, digital ownership is just an illusion. You don't own your files, your documents, your photos, or anything like that. You're just renting access to them. Let me explain. Services like iCloud or Google Drive allow you to store your files in the cloud. But the problem is that you as a person are building a dependency on these services. Putting non-essential information there is totally fine. But these companies are within their right to purge your data. Let's say if you were to have a subscription to increase the storage amount, you pay $20 a month to have, I don't know, 1,000 terabytes or and for whatever reason you didn't pay that subscription, just 1 month of that, these companies are within their right to purge your data. Now maybe it's on you because you didn't pay for it, but isn't it scary like how fast that switch happened? And historically, the alternative before was self-hosting. You will own your own services and you're not depending on anybody else but yourself. But with the prices for RAM, GPUs, and SSD surging, we are being nudged into an era where renting is the norm, where we own nothing and expect to be perfectly happy about it. And this video isn't about fear-mongering or abandoning the cloud, it's about resilience. It's about taking control over your digital life by self-hosting. So if the alternative is self-hosting, but with hardware being crazy expensive right now, we first need to take a look at why is it so hard and expensive to buy powerful or even medium grade computing hardware. The answer is staring at you every time you use Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, just any other things that has AI. The price increases are not due to any chip shortage or anything like that. It's just a priority shift. If a manufacturer can sell a chip for a GPU at the consumer level, maybe for like $400 or $500, or if they could just prioritize that chip but make this chip tailored for AI purposes and give it to a data center or just other big enterprises for like 20, 30, 40K, what do you think they're gonna do? From a company's perspective, they're focusing on profits. And profits right now, unfortunately, is powering AI slop. You see Will Smith eating spaghetti?
Oh, that's hot.
Yeah, you're welcome. On top of that, GPUs are just one part of the equation. On the other side, we have RAM. A very big manufacturer of consumer RAM decided, I'm gonna focus on AI data centers. Why? Because again, that's where the profit is at for these big companies. They don't care about you or me, they care about their margins. Manufacturing has just had a priority shift, and unfortunately, the consumers are not at the center anymore. And as a result, consumer electronics are beginning to stagnate while things become more expensive. And when owning computing hardware becomes more difficult, the same thing happens to our data. It gets pushed into platforms we don't control, and this is exactly why self-hosting matters. But what do you do when hardware is expensive? Ironically enough, you go buy a computer. I know. So it's true that right now new hardware is crazy expensive, but there is still a massive gold mine in secondary markets. And honestly, this has been the gold standard for anybody that partakes in self-hosting or just home labs in general, where they will go buy a computer off of eBay, set it up in their house, and boom, they have everything there. And take me for example, I recently bought a computer off of eBay. I also bought a few upgrades off of Amazon, and all that came out to around $300. And in case you're interested, I'll leave a link in the description for this video. And this desktop has become my home server. From this single machine, I run everything I actually rely on. I have a personal wiki which contains my notes. It all lives here instead of being on somebody else's machine. I have network attached storage that acts as my personal cloud, and on top of that, I run several Docker services that replace tools I used to pay for every single month. And what surprised me the most wasn't how powerful this setup was, it was how feasible it turned out to be. And all of this being managed by me, nobody else. And now I feel like a common misconception when you start self-hosting or you start doing things yourself is that it's an all or nothing approach, meaning you do it or you don't do it. There's no in between, but that's not exactly true. You can take a hybrid approach, such as myself, where the most important things, specifically your personal data, you own it, you store it, you manage that. But for everything else, it's all fair game. It's about building resilience as things get more expensive. This is where self-hosting really shines and where it could really help you. Having a cheap server is a win, but the real value, it's what you run on it. It's the tool that we use to opt out of the renter's economy, where ownership is replaced by a monthly fee. As ownership becomes more costly, then what's the alternative? Renting. Renting will become incredibly normalized. Every day that passes is another day close to a world where we will own nothing and we'll be perfectly happy. But we have seen how years prior, it's just easier to take $5 from a person every single month than just a one-time payment. And we're already seeing this shift. Like, I'm not crazy. The signs are here. Microsoft has a service called Microsoft Game Pass. And for those who don't know, think Netflix, but video games, where you have a rotating catalog of games. You're able to play these games, beat them, whatever, but just think about it. You're paying $20, $25 a month to rent access to these games. But let's say, you know, times are tough, you decide you don't need another subscription, and then you come home from work, you sit down, oh shit, I have 2 hours and an hour to kill, let me play some games. You turn on your computer or your console or whatever, oh shit, right, I don't own any fucking games. Why? Because I bought Game Pass. Now, it's extremely convenient to have Game Pass. I've had it for many years. But the problem is that since you're relying on this, you don't build up your physical collection. So whenever there is a circumstance that you cannot pay for, you don't have access, or they increase the price too much and you're like, no, this is way too expensive, kind of screwed. Like, we're seeing this exact same thing with software subscriptions. Think about like Adobe or Canva or just things like that. Browser-based IDEs and managed cloud platforms. Computing is slowly shifting from something you own to something you log into. And the primary motivator for this transition is convenience. It's a lot easier to pay a small fee than to handle everything yourself, especially with computing platforms like AWS. It's a lot easier for enterprises and businesses to run access. But this video is not for these big companies that have the money, that have the capital to do so. This is for the everyday consumer, where you shouldn't be at that exact same level. When it comes to your personal data, you should be able to completely control the entire flow of where that data ends up. But all that needs to be made by you, yourself, and you. And when it comes to personal data, you shouldn't be renting access. This is another area where self-hosting can help mitigate these risks. And by building my own mini cloud, I've replaced recurring costs on a number of these tools. And at the end of the day, these files, they are mine. I completely own them. They are 100% secure. And speaking about security, when people consider self-hosting, usually one of two questions pop up into their heads. What if I get hacked? And what if the hardware fails? These concerns are completely valid, but in practice, as long as you follow basic best practices, your data is remarkably safe. And modern tools make secure defaults the norm. And in many cases, you have to actively ignore them and go out of your way to leave yourself exposed. Because managing your own data is like a lifestyle change. When you start going to the gym, you start eating healthier, you start moving more, lifting, just your whole life changes and it becomes norm. It's the same thing with digital safety. For example, you're not gonna go and give people your password on Reddit. You're not doing that. And when it comes to backing up your data, if you follow best practices, you should be good. Take a look at 3, 2, 1. You have 3 copies of your data on 2 different physical devices, and you have 1 copy off-site. So the idea behind it is that there's multiple levels of contingency. If one fails, the other one's there. If that one fails, you have another one, and so forth and so on. As long as you have something in place, you're a lot better than the people who don't. And now, yes, there is a learning curve. I'm not saying that this is gonna be something you're gonna be able to understand overnight, especially if you're not familiar with IT. You might face a few hard days trying to set everything up, but that small investment of time buys you permanent digital ownership. Start small, think long-term, and own your digital freedom.